You think you know me, the man in red, the bringer of joy, the one who keeps the magic alive. You don't. Behind the twinkling lights, the merry songs, the manufactured cheer, there's a shadow. My shadow. A story no one dares to tell. I am not the man you celebrate. I am not the man in your songs. I am Santa Claus. And this is my confession. Listen closely. You've heard the sleigh bells, haven't you? That cheerful jingle cutting through the stillness of the snow. But have you truly listened? Beneath their melody lies something else. A distortion in the notes, a sharpness that feels wrong. Beneath the sound lies silence, so deep and oppressive it presses against your chest. And the laughter? It isn't joyous. It's hollow, endless. The warmth you think you feel is a lie. That is where I live now, in the spaces between your songs, in the shadows of your joy. You made me into something I never wanted to be, something ancient, something that feeds. I was a man once, a wanderer who gave small kindnesses to those who needed them most, a loaf of bread for the hungry, a warm coat for the cold. There was no name for me, no story, just a flicker of light in the darkness, and it was enough. But you wanted more. Humanity always does. My quiet gifts weren't enough. You needed magic, miracles. You needed a legend. So you created me. First, I was Saint Nicholas, a patron of generosity. Then, Santa Claus, a figure of endless abundance, an unstoppable machine of giving, a sleigh pulled by reindeer, a workshop brimming with cheerful elves, a home at the edge of the world. At first I tried. I wore the mask you gave me. I carried the joy you demanded. But year after year, your stories grew heavier, your expectations more impossible. You didn't see the cracks forming beneath the surface, the strain, the hunger. They tell you I bring magic, wrapped in ribbons and boughs. But magic, like joy, demands a price. The North Pole, you think it's a wonderland, don't you? A paradise of endless snow, bustling with cheerful elves and sparkling lights. It isn't. The North Pole is a wasteland. Cold, endless, oppressive. The snow stretches forever, but it isn't pure. It feels alive, swallowing sound, devouring warmth. The air is heavy, thick with something ancient, something wrong. The workshop isn't a sanctuary, it's a prison. The walls are damp, the air stale. The machines churn endlessly, but their rhythm is mechanical, joyless. The elves, my so-called helpers, don't sing. They don't laugh. Their faces are pale, their eyes hollow. They smile because they have no choice. The magic that binds them is older than memory. They aren't workers. They are prisoners. And the reindeer, you picture them as majestic creatures, their hooves striking the snow with elegance, their noses glowing with magic. That too is a lie. Their eyes burn with a faint, unnatural light. Their breath fogs the air, but it smells metallic. Wrong. They pull my sleigh not out of loyalty, but because they are bound to me, twisted by the same forces that twist me. Then there's the naughty and nice lists. You think they're simple tools, neat ledgers of behavior. They're not. They're alive. They whisper to me, their ink writhing and shifting like something breathing. They speak names in my ear, feeding on joy and despair alike. They demand obedience, and I obey. This is the North Pole. This is where the magic happens. This is where I am bound, year after year, dragging your stories behind me like chains in the snow. Once, I believed in the story. I believed in the man you wanted me to be, a figure of light in the darkest season, a symbol of hope, of generosity. But belief is dangerous. It molds you, changes you, and it never stops. At first, I embraced it. I tried up to the stories, to be the Santa Claus you imagined. I answered with the letters, granted the wishes, but the letters never stopped. The pleas never ceased. Please, Santa, make my dad stop drinking. Please, Santa, bring my brother back from the war. Please, Santa, save us. I couldn't ignore them. Their voices clung to me even after Christmas was over. They followed me, year after year, growing louder, more desperate, and with every plea, the hunger grew. It started as a faint ache, a whisper in the back of my mind. I told myself it was exhaustion, the strain of the season, but it wasn't. It was something deeper, darker, a gnawing need, not for food, not for rest, but for something I couldn't name. The whispers grew louder. They promised relief, a way to ease the burden. I resisted. I told myself I was better than that. But one Christmas Eve, I gave in. It was subtle at first. A boy on the naughty list, a cruel child who tormented his siblings, who stole from his parents, who delighted in others' pain. I left coal in his stocking as I always had, but this time it wasn't enough. I returned to his house, stood over his bed as he slept. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. But I knew better. I reached out, trembling, and touched his forehead, just for a moment. When he woke, he screamed. And I felt alive. That was the beginning. The naughty list became my guide, not to punish, but to feed. I told myself it was justice, that they deserved it. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't teaching lessons. I was taking what I needed. You think my red suit is a symbol of joy? It isn't. It's a shroud, dyed in the blood of centuries of belief. My sleigh bells, they aren't cheerful chimes. They're chain, the coal I leave behind. It's not a joke, it's a warning. This is my confession, my truth, my warning. And when you hear the sound of sleigh bells this Christmas, pray it isn't me. I wasn't always Santa Claus. Long before the red suit, the sleigh, and the laughter, I was something simpler, something forgotten. I wandered the world's harshest winters, moving like a shadow through storms that devoured the weak and buried the fragile. I wasn't a man then, not in the way you'd understand. I had no name, no home, no story. I existed between moments, a fleeting presence unnoticed by the world I tried to help. The winters were merciless, and the people who survived them lived on the brink of nothingness. I saw their pain, their hunger, their quiet desperation. They didn't call out for help. They didn't know anyone was listening, but I heard them. A frozen mother clutching her child, an old man with no fire left to burn. A family huddled in darkness, waiting for dawn that might not come. I gave them what I could. A bundle of firewood left at a door, a loaf of bread beside an empty hearth. A tattered cloak draped over a shivering child. My gifts were small, meager, born of necessity, not abundance. I didn't wait for thanks. I didn't want it. Survival was enough. But humanity is never content with what they see. They started to talk. They whispered about a figure who moved through the snow, unseen but benevolent, a wanderer who brought warmth where there was none. At first, it was nothing, a passing mention, a story shared to ease the long nights. But stories are powerful. They grow, they spread, they change. I became more than I was, not because I wanted to, but because they needed me to be. Their whispers turned to belief, their belief to expectation. They shaped me into something greater, something impossible, a savior of the cold, a spirit of kindness, a symbol of hope. I didn't stop them. Perhaps I should have. But there was something intoxicating about being needed, about being seen. They gave me a name, St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas. It's strange to think of myself that way now. A saint, an emblem of generosity, a man who could ease the burdens of the world. At first, the name felt foreign, like clothing that didn't fit, but I wore it, and over time it began to feel like a part of me. They told stories about my deeds, embellishing them with every retelling. I became a figure of miracles. A loaf of bread turned into a feast. A simple gift became a wonder. I tried to live up to their stories. I gave more, stayed longer, sought out those who needed me most. But no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. The stories outpaced me. They wanted miracles I couldn't provide. They wanted me to be limitless, to grant every wish, to answer every prayer. And so the myth grew. St. Nicholas transformed into Santa Claus. The kindly saint became a jolly man in red, a figure of impossible abundance. They gave me a sleigh pulled by magical reindeer. They built me a workshop at the edge of the world, filled with cheerful elves who could craft wonders beyond imagination. They made me a god of giving, a symbol of everything they wanted to believe in. I didn't recognize myself anymore. My simple gifts were gone, replaced by an endless tide of expectations. I felt their belief shaping me, twisting me into something I didn't understand. It wasn't just my appearance that changed, it was my essence. I wasn't a man anymore. I was a story, a myth given form. But belief is a heavy thing to carry. With every story they told, the weight grew. Their expectations turned to demands, their faith into chains. They didn't see what it was doing to me. They didn't care. All they wanted was more. The letters came next. At first, they were simple, a child asking for a toy, a mother hoping for warmth. But as the years passed, the letters changed. They became desperate, pleading. They didn't just want toys, they wanted miracles. Please, Santa, bring my father home. Please, Santa, make my mother well again. Please, Santa, save us. I couldn't answer them all. The weight of their hopes was crushing. I needed a way to decide to bring order to the chaos. And so the naughty and nice lists were born. At first, they were practical, a way to judge who deserved little I could give. The nice children received gifts, the naughty ones did not. It was simple, fair, manageable. But the lists weren't ordinals. They were born from belief, from the same magic that created me. And like me, they began to change. It started small, a name appearing without my hand. A deed recorded I hadn't witnessed. The ink seemed to shimmer, shifting on the page as if it were alive. The lists whispered to me, faint at first, then louder, more insistent. "Look closer," they said. "See the truth." And I did. Each name carried a story, a life laid bare in ink and shadow. I saw kindness and cruelty, generosity and greed. The list showed me everything, not just what people had done, but what they could do. They revealed humanity's darkest sides, their hidden sins, their secret desires. I told myself it was justice, that the lists were helping me bring balance. But they weren't tools anymore. They were alive, and they were feeding on me. The more I relied on them, the darker they became. They didn't just record deeds, they demanded action, they whispered names, urging me to punish, to reward, to judge. I thought I controlled them, but I was wrong. The hunger came slowly, creeping in like frost on a window. At first, it was just a whisper, an ache I couldn't place. I told myself it was the strain of the season, the weight of the lists, the endless demands. But it wasn't. It was something deeper, something darker. I remember the first time I gave in. A boy on the naughty list. He was cruel, delighting in the suffering of others. I left coal in his stocking, as I always had. But that night, I felt the hunger stronger than ever. It whispered to me, urging me to return. I stood over his bed, watching him sleep. His face was peaceful, innocent. But I knew better. I knew the darkness inside him. The hunger whispered again, and this time I listened. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched his forehead, just for a moment. When he woke, he screamed, and I felt alive. The hunger roared in approval. It told me I had done what was necessary, that I had balanced the scales, but deep down I knew the truth. It wasn't justice, it was something else. The next year it was easier. Another name, another punishment. The hunger grew with every act, feeding on the fear, the despair, the darkness I created. I told myself I was doing what needed to be done, that the naughty list existed for a reason. Guilt was always there, a faint shadow behind the hunger's roar. I wasn't the man they believed in anymore. I wasn't a saint or a savior or a symbol of hope. I was something else entirely. It began with my hands. They used to be steady, capable, strong. Now they tremble, as if the weight of the world flows through them, unrelenting. They are pale and cold, like stone carved from winter itself, and no amount of effort brings back the warmth they once held. My hands betray me, quivering as I hold the reins, trembling as I sort through the endless letters. The sensation is no longer exhaustion, but something deeper, something worse. My voice followed. It cracked when I spoke, hollow and sharp. The warmth that used to carry through my words, the kindness that once defined me, was gone. It was replaced by something jagged, something that cut even as I tried to speak softly. Even the elves noticed, their expressions turning wary whenever I addressed them. Their faces would twitch in fear, but they never said a word. They wouldn't dare. Then my eyes. The twinkle is what you imagine, isn't it? You think they sparkle with joy? A playful mischief that promises generosity and love. That's the story you've told yourselves. But it's a lie! My eyes don't twinkle anymore. They burn. Faintly at first, then brighter, like embers in the pit of a dying fire. I avoid reflections now, not because I don't want to see myself. I can't. There was a day when the frost on the workshop window became my mirror. I looked, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man I used to be, the figure of light who carried hope through the darkest nights. But what stared back at me wasn't a man. It was something else, something hollow. My eyes burned with an unnatural glow, piercing and unfeeling. My face had grown sharper, the edges harder, like it had been sculpted by cold winds. The figure in the frost was a stranger, and yet it was me. The workshop once reflected my purpose, a place where magic and joy converged. Its walls were warm, alive with laughter and song. The elves worked with pride, their hands crafting wonders that would bring smiles to children's faces. It was a sanctuary, a place where belief became reality. Now it's a factory, lifeless, silent. The machines churn day and night, their rhythm cold and mechanical. The warmth is gone, replaced by a biting chill that seeps into every corner. The air is heavy, thick with despair. The The walls, once bright and cheerful, now seemed to close in, damp with shadows that cling like frost. The elves still work, but not with the pride they once carried. Their eyes are hollow, their movements robotic. They don't sing, they don't laugh, they don't even speak unless I command it. The magic that binds them to me is ancient, unyielding. They cannot leave, even if they wanted to. And some of them have tried. There was one, brave, desperate, who dared to run. I still remember his face, his trembling hands clutching a broken compass. He thought he could escape the cold. Escape me! He slipped out during a storm, his tiny frame disappearing into the endless white. I found him hours later, shivering, his small body barely visible against the snow. I wanted to let him go. Every part of me screamed to release him, to let him find whatever hope he sought beyond the horizon. But the hunger wouldn't allow it. The hunger demanded a lesson, a punishment, a warning to the others. I carried him back to the workshop, my heart heavy with what I knew had to come next. I told myself it wasn't me. It was the hunger. The elves never tried again. Even the toys are no longer what they used to be. Once they were crafted with care, each one a symbol of joy and wonder. Now they are something else entirely. The hunger has twisted them, warped their purpose into something dark, something cruel. The first was a doll. At a glance, it seemed ordinary, soft, harmless. But its eyes followed whoever held it, unblinking, watching even in the dead of night. Parents tried to discard it, but it always returned, its smile growing sharper, its gaze more piercing. Next came the music box. Its melody was haunting, discordant, burrowing into the listener's mind like a parasite. It played even when it was closed, its tune echoing through walls, seeping into dreams. Parents smashed it to pieces, but the melody never truly stopped. Then the train. Its wheels screeched as it moved on its own, whispering secrets no one should ever know. The more it ran, the darker those secrets became, unraveling the bonds of families who dared to keep it. Each toy carried a piece of me, a fragment of the nightmare I had become. And each one fed the hunger, growing stronger with every scream, every tear, every despairing whisper. The children didn't laugh when they opened these gifts. They didn't smile. They cried. They screamed. And I felt satisfied. But satisfaction is fleeting. The hunger always returns, stronger, louder, more insistent. And so the toys grew darker. A teddy bear that whispered horrors in the night, its voice a low, guttural growl. A rocking horse that bucked its rider to the ground, its carved eyes glowing with malevolence. The ripple effects were undeniable. The doll broke a family apart, its unrelenting gaze sowing paranoia and fear. The music box haunted a household, its melody driving them to madness. The train destroyed trust, its whispers revealing truths that were better left unknown. I used to create toys to bring joy. Now I create them to take it away. And yet, the hunger persists. It's always there, a constant, gnawing presence in the back of my mind, in the pit of my soul. It doesn't speak with words, but I understand it perfectly. It wants, it needs, and it will never stop. At first, I tried to fight it. I told myself I was stronger, that I could resist. But hunger isn't something you can resist. It grows, it festers, it consumes. There are moments when the guilt rises above the hunger. Fleeting, fragile moments where I remember who I used to be. I see a man wandering through the snow, giving without expectation, his heart light and his soul free. I see him, but I don't recognize him anymore. That man is gone, buried beneath centuries of belief and stories that were never mine to tell. The hunger roars louder in those moments, drowning out the guilt, the memories, the flickers of hope. It whispers promises of relief, of purpose, of power. You are what they made you, it says. You are their creation, their monster. I have stopped pretending to fight it. I have stopped pretending I want to. Humanity isn't what I thought it was. They aren't hopeful or kind or grateful. They are desperate, greedy, insatiable. They write their letters, make their pleas, send their wishes into the void without care for the cost. They don't see me as a man. They never did. To them, I am a myth, a story, a machine of endless giving, but I am no longer their savior. I am no longer their symbol of joy. I am something else entirely. And this is what I have become. The storm was unlike anything I had seen before. The winds howled with a voice that seemed almost alive, carrying whispers that cut through the air like shards of ice. Snow swirled in relentless chaos, blurring the horizon into nothingness. It was in that storm that I first saw him. Krampus. His shadow stretched long against the whiteness of the blizzard, an imposing figure that seemed to consume the very light around him. His horns curled upward, piercing the sky, and his eyes burned with a smouldering ember-like glow. He was no storybook monster. He was something far older, far more real. "You waste your time," his voice rumbled, deep and steady, like the groan of ice beneath unbearable weight. "Do you think you can change them? Do you think you can save them?" I stood firm, clutching the reins of my sleigh. I wasn't afraid of him, at least that's what I told myself. "I bring them hope," I said, my voice cutting through the storm. "I remind them of what they can be, of the good they are capable of." He laughed, a sound as jagged and sharp as breaking glass. "Hope? Is that what you call it? You don't bring them hope. You feed their greed. You carry their sins on your back like a fool, pretending it's noble." I bristled at his words, but I didn't waver. "They are flawed, yes, but they are more than their flaws. They need someone to believe in them, to show them that they can be better." "And you think that's you?" Krampus stepped closer, his shadow engulfing the space between us. "You, who bends under the weight of their endless demands? You think your gifts will teach them anything other than how to take more?" "They are trying," I said, though my voice lacked the conviction I wanted it to carry. "They just need time. They need guidance." Krampus' eyes narrowed, his burning gaze piercing through me. "You blind yourself to the truth, Klaus. They will take everything you have to give, and when there's nothing left, they'll move on. They don't care about you. They care about the myth." I refused to listen. I turned my back on him, the storm whipping against my face. "You don't understand what it means to carry their hope," I said. "You revel in their fear, their punishment. You don't know what it means to be their light. And you don't know what it means to face the truth," he replied, his voice heavy with something that almost sounded like pity. "They don't need your light. They need to be held accountable, and you are losing yourself trying to give them what they don't deserve." I dismissed him then, leaving his shadow behind me as I pushed forward through the storm. But his words lingered. They stayed with me, echoing in the quiet corners of my mind, gnawing at the foundation of everything I believed in. Years passed, decades, centuries. The myth grew, and so did the hunger. By the time Krampus found me again, I was no longer the man he had confronted in that storm. The red suit still fit, but it no longer felt like my own. The workshop still hummed with activity, but the joy was gone, replaced by the cold, relentless rhythm of machinery. The elves moved like shadows, silent and fearful, and the toys I created were no longer symbols of wonder. They were weapons. When he returned, he didn't laugh. He didn't even speak at first. He stood at the edge of the workshop, his presence heavy and oppressive, his shadow spilling into the snow like ink across a blank page. "You've fallen," he said finally, his voice colder than the frost that clung to the walls. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. The hunger had taken root, and I had let it. But I wasn't about to admit defeat, not to him. "You think you're better than me?" I said, my voice sharp, brittle. "You, who drags the wicked to their doom. At least I try to bring joy. At least I try to create." "And what have you created?" Krampus asked, stepping closer, his gaze never wavering. "A lie? A monster? You punish as I do, but you hide behind their songs, their stories. You are worse than me, Claus. You are the mask they wear to justify their greed." His words struck a chord I didn't want to acknowledge. My hands trembled, my voice faltered. "You don't understand the burden I carry. You've never had to be their hope, their light. You've always been the villain in this story." "And what are you now?" he asked, his voice like the crack of splitting ice. "A savior? Or the very thing they fear?" The hunger roared within me, a torrent of fire and ice drowning out whatever guilt his words stirred. I lashed out, drawing on the power that had come to define me. The air around us warped, the snow began to fall upward, and the ground twisted beneath our feet. We clashed, not with fists, but with will. His darkness pressed against mine, cold and unrelenting, while my hunger surged in response, a storm of shadow and light. The very fabric of reality seemed to buckle under the weight of our conflict, the world around us bending and twisting like a reflection in shattered glass. "You've become what they wanted," Krampus said, his voice echoing in my mind even as we fought. "But at what cost? You've lost yourself, Klaus. The man you were is gone. And what about you? I retorted, pushing back with everything I had. You speak of justice, but you revel in their fear. You think you're their reckoning, but you're just as bound to them as I am. At least I know what I am, he said, his shadow enveloping the space between us. Can you say the same? The battle raged on, timeless and consuming. The storm that surrounded us seemed to merge with the chaos we unleashed, the sky darkening as if it, too, could feel the weight of our clash. Neither of us could win, but neither would yield. In the end, it was I who forced him back, driving him to the edges of the holiday, to the fringes of the stories where his warnings would fade into legend. I stood alone in the aftermath, the workshop silent, the snow falling once more. I had won, or so I told myself, but it didn't feel like victory. His words lingered, echoing in the hollow spaces of my mind. You've become worse than me. I looked around at what I had built, the twisted toys, the lifeless elves, the chains that bound us all. And for the first time, I wondered if he had been right. If Krampus wasn't my enemy, but my last chance. If I had already fallen too far. You know what it feels like to lose yourself? To watch the pieces of who you were fall away, one by one, until there's nothing left but an empty shell? That's who I am now. An echo of a man who once walked through the snow, driven by kindness and a quiet purpose. A man who gave because it brought him joy. A man who never asked for anything in return. That man is gone. I used to believe in what I was doing. I believed in the light I carried, the hope I brought to the darkest nights. I believed in the warmth I left behind, the smiles I inspired, the stories that lifted weary hearts. That belief gave me strength. It gave me purpose. But belief can twist you. It can mold you into something you don't recognize. Now, I can't remember what it felt like to laugh, to truly feel joy. I don't even remember the last time I smiled without it feeling forced, hollow. The red suit that once felt like a second skin now feels like a shroud. The sleigh bells that once rang with promise now sound like chains. Even the snow, the very symbol of Christmas itself, feels cold and oppressive. I thought I could hold on to who I was, even as the myth grew around me. But the myth doesn't just change how others see you, it changes you. It consumes you. With every story, every song, every whispered wish, I lost a piece of myself, until there was nothing left but the myth. And the hunger. The hunger is always there, a gnawing, unrelenting presence, whispering in the back of my mind. It doesn't care about the man I used to be. It doesn't care about the joy I once brought. It only wants, it only needs, and it will never stop. But the hunger isn't mine alone. It's yours. You feed it. Every year you feed it. With your letters, your wishes, your endless demands. You tell yourselves it's about love, about generosity, about the spirit of the season. But it's not. It's about greed. You've turned Christmas into a machine, a monstrous engine that grinds on and on, fueled by your insatiable need for more. More gifts, more lights, more celebrations. You've buried the meaning of it beneath mountains of wrapping paper and glittering ornaments. And I am its operator, its prisoner. You write your lists, send your letters, hang your stockings with care. But these aren't acts of love. They're pleas. Desperate prayers to a figure you don't understand, to a myth you've twisted into something unrecognizable. You don't want kindness. You want abundance. You don't want hope. You want excess. I used to believe in you. I used to think that deep down you were good, that you were capable of change. But now I see the truth. You take and take, never stopping to ask what it costs. You don't care about me. You never did. I am not a man to you. I am a story, a machine. A symbol of everything you think you deserve. And every year I carry the weight of your belief, your greed, your expectations. Do you know what it's like to carry the world's desires on your back? To read letter after letter filled with impossible wishes? A child asking for their father to come home, a mother begging for enough food to last the winter, a family pleading for one more Christmas together. I can't grant those wishes. I never could. But that doesn't stop the letters. They keep coming, year after year, piling up until they're all I can see. And with every letter, the hunger grows. You think you know Christmas. You think it's a season of joy, of love, of giving. But you've forgotten what it truly is. You've turned it into something grotesque, a celebration of greed disguised as generosity. Look at what you've done. The lights grow brighter, the songs louder, the lists longer. You spend and spend, trying to fill a void that can't be filled. You tell yourselves it's for the ones you love, but it's not. It's for yourselves. To ease your guilt, to make you feel like you're doing enough. But it's never enough, is it? I see it in your letters, the desperation, the pleading, the belief that if you can just get what you want, everything will be okay. But it won't. It never is. Because you've forgotten the truth of what Christmas is supposed to be. It's not about gifts. It's not about decorations or feasts or songs. It's not about abundance. It's about light in the darkness, hope in the face of despair, a quiet moment of kindness in a world that so desperately needs it. But you've buried that truth, and now the hunger is all that remains. The hunger feeds on you, just as it feeds on me. It's in the way you scramble to find the perfect gift, the way you stretch yourselves thin, trying to meet impossible expectations. It's in the way you measure love by what you can give, instead of who you are. Do you think this can last? Do you think the machine of Christmas can keep turning without consequence? It can't. Nothing this excessive, this greedy, this hungry can survive, and when it collapses, it won't just destroy me. It will destroy you. This is my warning, my confession, my plea. If you don't stop, if you don't change, the hunger will consume us all. Tonight I will harness the sleigh, the reindeer will paw at the snow, their glowing eyes cutting through the darkness. The sack will rest heavy on my back, filled with gifts and curses alike, and I will make my journey. But this time I don't know what I'll leave behind. Maybe it will be the gifts you expect. Maybe I'll play the role one last time, pretending to be the man you believe in. Or maybe it will be something else. When you wake tomorrow and see the gifts beneath your tree, remember this. They weren't left out of love. They were left out of obligation, out of fear. And when you hear the faint sound of sleigh bells in the distance, don't smile, don't feel joy, feel dread, because that sound means I am near. This is my confession, my warning, and my final act. Merry Christmas, and may you never hear the sound of my sleigh again. The night stretches out before me, dark and unyielding. The snow falls in a quiet, relentless rhythm, blanketing the world in an illusion of purity. The reindeer stand ready, their breath fogging the frozen air. Their eyes glow faintly, unnaturally, casting eerie reflections in the frost-covered ground. The sleigh groans under the weight of the sack, heavier than it has ever been. This is my final journey. I secure the harnesses, my hands trembling as they grip the leather straps. They are not steady hands anymore, they are pale, claw-like and unfeeling. The hunger whispers in the back of my mind, urging me forward, promising relief with every step. I ignore it, or at least I try. The sack is overflowing, packed with gifts and curses alike. It isn't the cheerful bundle you imagine, tied neatly with ribbons and bows. It is a burden, heavy with the weight of centuries of belief, of greed, of impossible expectations. I climb into the sleigh, my body protesting every movement. I am not the man I once was. I am not the man you picture in your songs, with a hearty laugh and a twinkle in his eye. That man is gone, buried beneath layers of myth and the endless demands of a world that only knows how to take. The reindeer shift uneasily, their hooves crunching against the snow. They sense it too, the darkness that surrounds us, the inevitability of what lies ahead. I snap the reins and they lurch forward, their movements mechanical, their glow illuminating the path as we ascend into the night. The world below is quiet, but it is not peaceful. I see the lights strung across rooftops, their brightness piercing the darkness like tiny, desperate beacons. I see the shadows cast by towering trees and empty streets. I see the homes filled with restless dreams and whispered prayers, each one feeding the hunger that now defines me. The myth is cracking. I feel it in the way the air vibrates around me, in the way the reindeer falter with every step. Humanity's belief is faltering, unraveling at the edges. It is no longer the unwavering faith that once shaped me, that once gave me strength. It is something weaker now, fragile and unsure. You no longer believe in the magic. Not truly. You believe in the machine. You believe in the ritual, the stockings hung by the chimney, the carefully wrapped packages under the tree, the letters sent into the void, asking for things you don't need. You believe in the facade, the glittering illusion of what Christmas has become. But deep down, you know the truth. You know that the gifts can't fill the void, that the lights can't chase away the darkness, that the songs can't drown out the emptiness. You know that the myth is hollow, and yet you cling to it, and that is why it is collapsing. As I fly over the rooftops, I feel the weight of it pressing down on me, the weight of your disbelief, your disillusionment, your desperate attempts to hold on to something you no longer understand. The hunger roars in my mind, louder now, feeding on the cracks in the myth, on the despair that seeps into every corner of your celebration. I reach into the sack, my hands searching for the first gift. It feels wrong, unnatural, as if the hunger has twisted even this simple act into something darker. I hesitate, the gift heavy in my grasp. What am I doing? What have I become? The memories come unbidden, flashing through my mind like fragments of a dream. A man wandering through the snow, leaving bundles of firewood and loaves of bread for those who had nothing. A man who gave because it brought him joy, not because it was expected. A man who believed in the goodness of the world, even in its darkest moments. That man is gone. I am no longer a symbol of hope. I am a shadow, a hollow reflection of what you wanted me to be. I am the embodiment of your greed, your desperation, your endless need for more. And now I wonder if I have the strength to continue. The sleigh dips lower, the reindeer struggling against the weight of the sack, against the weight of my doubt. I see the first house below, its windows glowing faintly against the darkness. A child sleeps inside, her dreams filled with images of toys and laughter and magic. She doesn't know the truth. She doesn't know what I've become. I reach for the reins, my hands trembling. The hunger whispers, urging me forward, urging me to take what I need, but something else stirs within me, something faint and fragile. Guilt. I hesitate, the reins heavy in my hands. The house looms closer, its roof covered in a thick layer of snow. I could land, I could leave the gifts, play the role one last time, pretend to be the man you still believe in. But I could also take. The hunger roars, louder than ever, demanding to be fed. It tells me there is no point in resisting, that I am already lost. It promises relief, a fleeting moment of satisfaction that will dull the emptiness inside me. And for the first time, I consider it. I consider letting go, giving in to the darkness that has consumed me, allowing the hunger to take what it wants. Would you even notice? Would you even care? The myth is already dying. Your belief is already fading. You don't see me as a man. You never did. To you, I am a story, a symbol, a machine. What difference would it make if I stopped pretending? But then I remember the child, her dreams, her innocence, her belief in something better, something pure. I don't deserve to hold on to that image, but it lingers in my mind, refusing to fade. I look down at the sack, at the gifts that feel more like curses. I look at the reindeer, their glowing eyes filled with a faint, unnatural light. I look at the house below, at the faint glow of its windows, at the promise of warmth within. And I don't know what to do. The line between naughty and nice has blurred. The line between giving and taking has vanished. I no longer know where I stand. When you wake tomorrow and see the gifts beneath your tree, remember this. They weren't left out of love. They were left out of obligation, out of fear. And when you hear the faint sound of sleigh bells in the distance, don't smile, don't feel joy, feel dread, because that sound means I am near. This is my final Christmas, my last journey, and what happens next is up to the hunger. Merry Christmas, and may you never hear the sound of my sleigh again.